Dear students, happy to meet you again. Today in the CLT class, we are going to see the natural approach to language learning. Well, I'm Dr. Joy Christina, Research Supervisor and Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sacred Heart College, Tirupattur. To start with, how did 7.8 billion people become so fluent in their first languages? How did and when did they become so good? And at what point did they stop stammering awkwardly and making rookie mistakes? We'll look deeper into the process and techniques of first language acquisition using the lens of the natural approach theory. We can discover how native speakers learn the languages and how you can do the same. What is the natural approach to language learning? The natural approach is a method of second language learning that focuses on communication skills and language exposure before rules and grammar, similar to how you learn your first language or your mother tongue. Who proposed the natural method? The natural approach language learning theory was developed by Dr. S. Stephen Cashin of USC and Tracy Terrell, the University of California, San Diego. Dr. Cashin is a linguist and researcher who focused his studies on the curious process of language acquisition. Dr. Terrell, a fellow linguist, joined him in developing the highly scrutinized methodology known as natural approach. What does natural approach mean? The theory is based on the radical notion, that is the idea that we all learn a language in the same way, and that we can be seen in how we acquire our first language as children. If we want to know the secrets of picking up a new language, we should observe how a child gets his first. We know it works because we have 7.8 billion humans on the planet who on a daily basis fail the first language with astonishing fluency. The term natural almost presupposes that there are unnatural methods of learning a language. To Drs. Cashin and Terrell, these are the structural approaches to learning. The grammar method that deconstructs a language into its component pieces, and they listen and repeat drills that happen in classrooms. In the natural approach, there is almost a Zen-like attitude towards acquiring a language. You are not forced to utter words or phrases, much less pronounce them correctly. There are no endless drills on correct usage, no mentions of grammar rules or long list of vocabulary to memorize. There's no hurry or worry in your learning. By continuously exposing you to the language, to how it's used in different situations, and by giving you meaningful and memorable inputs, a spontaneous emergence of speech happens in this approach. Now we'll see the principles of the natural approach. The basic principles of the theory can be broken into four major stages of language acquisition. The first stage is pre-production. Here, this pre-production stage is essential and it is a silent phase where nothing seems to be happening. Children have the stage when they are not really talking at all. It seems nothing is going on. You're essentially getting nada, no utterance, just a blank stare. Actually, so many things are happening. What is happening in the silent stage? They are listening, picking up on meanings, reading context clues, interpreting and making guesses on what is being said, by even making mistakes. The next is early stage. In early stage, when babies start uttering their first words, phrases and simple sentences, still again the focus is on comprehension. But this time the crux of the issue is You're being understood by other person. Again, you don't need perfect grammar or of any sort. Bothering with correct grammar comes late in the acquisition stage. In the natural approach, the early stages are replete with grammatically incorrect communication that aren't really implicitly corrected. So when a child says I drinks, which is wrong actually, mom doesn't give him a firm scolding. She finds it cute and then hands him a drink. But the child is slowly getting fluent with this first language. He's communicating and using language to express what he wants, and all that's happening without any direct grammar lessons. The third part is speech emergence. Over time, the child's singular words and short phrases will transform into lengthier ones, thus enters the speech emergence stage. Here, the sentences, while longer, are still relatively basic and are likely to contain a lot of mistakes in grammar, pronunciation, usage. However, the progress is undeniable as more content is added to the speech. Moreover, it would seem that the child is inclined to actually work through and craft sentences for the sake of communication, not for the sake of learning, but for the sake of communication. At this point, the child's level of understanding other speech is quite high. The fourth part is intermediate fluency. Progress to fluency continues as more exposure to the language happens. The meaningful linguistic experience takes up so fast so that when the child sits waiting for his first grammar class, is already chatting non-stop with the seatmates with perfectly decent grammar even before the language teacher arrives. This is the final stage known as intermediate fluency. And when the lessons do come, the child is just getting to peek behind the scenes to see the specific rules for the grammar guiding his own language usage. All that's explained to him is the rationale, the nuances of communication behind the groupings of words is being using naturally all along. It's all a review of what he already innately knows. And that's what natural approach is all about. It's looking back to first language acquisition and using the whole bag of tricks there is there in order to get the same kind of success for second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. in language acquisition. Just because you're learning another language doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. The expectations and the learning curve might be different for adults, but the underlying human mental and psychological mechanisms are the same. Now, these are the till now we have seen the principles. Now we'll see the characteristic features of the natural approach. Here, input refers to what's being relayed to the language learner, the packages of language that are delivered to and received by the listener. The natural approach puts a high emphasis on not just the amount but also the nature of the input received. Input is also known as exposure. For proper meaningful language acquisition to occur, the input should also be meaningful and comprehensible. Now, the comprehension part. In the natural approach, the initial focus really is on comprehension. The crux of the issue is, do you understand what is being said? You don't need to notice subject verb agreement for this. Understanding the meaning of something can be done in a variety of ways besides technical grammar breakdowns. Comprehension must precede production for true internal learning to be done. Now we shall see the theory of language here. The natural approach is a method of language teaching, but there's also a theoretical model behind it that gives a bit more detail about what can happen during the process of internalizing a language. This model consists of 5 major hypotheses. They repeat a lot of what was already previously described, but they provide a workable framework that can be picked apart for crafting learning strategies. Acquiring learning hypothesis. Acquisition learning hypothesis. Two distinct ways to learn a language. One way via acquisition and is akin to how children acquire the very first language. The process is not conscious and happens without the learner knowing. The, the gears are already turning as the learner processes the second language and uses it almost strictly for communication. The second way is learning the conscious method that involves the learner actively studying and gaining formal instruction about the language and its rules. Learning focuses more on technicalities of the language. Between the two, acquisition is more significant in enabling language fluency. Monitor hypothesis. This hypothesis states that the language learner's knowledge gained from conscious learning is largely used to monitor output rather than enabling true communication. In other words, the learned system functions as a language checker. Meanwhile, the knowledge gained from the acquisition does enable spontaneous speech and language production. The acquired system is what grants learners the ability to actually utilize the language. Monitoring via the learned system requires the learner to essentially take a mental pause before saying anything. The phrase to be is scanned for any errors and may be corrected accordingly based on the learned rules and grammar. Dear students, with this we will give a pause to the video, and the second part will be continued in the next video. So stay tuned for the next video. We shall meet in the next section. Thank you very much.